Hi everyone again. To be honest, I'm really excited because this is the first event that I'm attending as a speaker in this community, and I would like to thank the organizer who contributed to building of this magnificent community and organizing such events. And I can only imagine how difficult it is to organize these events. And so, thank you for all your incredible efforts. And I would also like to thank you for contributing to growth of this community by participating in this event. So, in this session, I will try to explain how we can solve real-world problems using domain-driven design and domain storytelling in Go. I won't be able to dig into domain-driven design and domain storytelling during this session. As you can imagine, these two topics are really tough, and our session time is not enough for this, unfortunately. I will just try to highlight the important points and give you some tips, just give you some tips to you, solve any problems as much as I can do. But first, I would like to introduce myself to you again. I'm Jem. I'm working as a technical lead at Getir, and I'm a software craftsman who love design and develop distributed, scalable, reliable, and robust systems. I regularly write technical articles on my Medium page, and also I use Go to build some cool stuff. On the other hand, I love to talk about the software engineering, software design architectural principles, domain-driven design, CQRS, and distributed systems. If you're interested in, you can follow me on Medium. So, in this, I prepared a user story for you, and I will use domain storytelling to visualize the story, and then I will create domain components and share simple codes to accomplish our story. At this point, I have to say that I'm not going to develop very complex codes or design an entire system. And for DDD lovers, I must say, the main purpose of this session is to understand how we can use some disciplines in our domains, and I will make a domain implementation as simple as possible in the coding part. I will not talk about concepts such as checking the immutability of value objects or creating domain-independent aggregate IDs or collecting events on the aggregate and publishing them to a simple broker. And these topics will not be included in this session because as a high level of expertise is required for these topics. Let's say we are part of a team called GeForce, working on Steam, and our team is responsible for the retention domain. Let's assume that our cool friends you can see on the bottom right is our product owner. Suppose that our product owner mentioned that we may offer discounts to some of our customers on the product detail page. And these our customers can have their products they want to buy by paying less money. We can increase our sellers, and also we can make a good impact to our customers. Actually, this idea sounds pretty good to me, and generally many teams hash over this idea in their rooming sessions, and these discussions will usually take a very long time, and we will use a 4-step strategy to prevent this and to produce a more robust solution. In the first step, we will analyze our problem with all other stakeholders, and then in the second steps, we will discover our domain and try to create a user story map. And the third step, we will determine our strategy and decide how to communicate with other contexts. And in the last step, we will design our aggregate using the aggregate design canvas, and then I will share some codes with you. Actually, I wanted to implement the code in the last part of the session, but I didn't want to take any risk of not being able to complete this session because, there was a time limit for us, and I need to use my time perfectly. So we need to align with all other stakeholders that are part of this problem and try to understand the problem deeply. You and your teammates may think you have the right solution for this problem, but getting the opinion of all other stakeholders in this problem domain and including them into the solution will make your solution stronger and more accurate. On the other hand, every decision we take regarding the architecture, the code, or the organization has business and user consequences. And in order to design, build, to evolve our software systems most effectively, our decisions need to create the optimal business impact, which can only be achieved if we are aligned to business goals, as well as supporting the user current and potential future needs. And badly designed architecture or boundaries can have a negative impact or even make it impossible to achieve these goals. Unfortunately, we have a few options to build this alignment. We can use impact mapping, business model canvas, and product strategy mapping, or worldly mapping, or user story mapping for the business, clarify the business perspective and understand the user vantage point. I prefer the use worldly canvas mapping for this example. As you can see, according to worldly mapping, first of all, we need to declare our purposes. Let's say we have two different purposes for this story. And the first one, to increase our sales and satisfy our customers by offering some discounts. And the second one is to enable our customers to reach more entertainment by paying less money with some different discount mechanics. And after defining a purpose, we need to declare our scope. And in this example, we can declare our scope like as to observe growth metrics by offering some discounts, and to interact, to track our customers' interactions with our discounts. On the other hand, after the declaration of the scope, we need to focus on the user groups. And we can use three different groups for this example. And the first group contains customers who make the most purchases. And the second groups, customers can have products in their cart for a certain period of time. And the last groups contains first-time buyers or first-time customers. And after declare the user groups or define our boundaries about the users, we need to clarify the user needs. Let's say our user needs show some offers in the product detail page to add some products to their carts. And after the needs declaration, we can design our map diagram. And in the worldly mapping canvas, we have users, we have some needs, user needs, and we have some actions. And we have, as you can see, we have two different actions. The first one is the add to cart, and the second one is the complete the order. We assume that we may increase the add to cart and complete the order actions with using our feature. So, wait a second. Okay. After assuming that we have created such a map with all our stakeholders, we have to discover our domain. And this is the most crucial aspect of domain-driven design. And you cannot skip discovery if your whole team doesn't build up a good understanding of the domain. All software decisions will be misguided. Unfortunately, spreading domain knowledge through the whole team will create a shared understanding, and it enables developers to build the software systems aligned to the domain, which can be more flexible to incorporate future business changes. On the other hand, ensuring the domain knowledge is spread across the whole team enables its members to contribute with ideas for improving the product. By the way, discovery must be continuous, and teams who are successful with the domain-driven design are practicing discovery techniques on a frequent basis. And there's always more to learn about the domain. And when first attempting discovery, a facilitator who is experienced with techniques like event storming or user journey mapping can help a team to see the true benefits of discovery beyond the superficial level. We can use domain storytelling and event example mapping and event storming and user journey mapping and user story mapping to discover our domains deeply. I prefer to use the domain storytelling in this session, and basically domain storytelling is a technique for understanding a business domain by relying on people's natural ability to learn a new language by listening to other people speaking that language. and it is also a modeling technique, and it uses a pictographic language with a simple icons for actors and work objects, and joined by activity arrows. And the technique is meant to be very simple, with almost no technical requirements, and you just need a whiteboard and sticky notes could be enough for this technique. And this allows a storytelling session to begin just by having the right people in the right room, in the same room, and you don't need to learn any modeling tools or any programming language first. And its primary purpose is to transform domain knowledge into business software. This purpose is achieved by bringing together people from different backgrounds or different perspectives and allowing them to learn from each other by telling and visualizing stories. On the other hand, domain storytelling is different from an event storming, and domain stories do not follow a left to right timeline because they need to show cooperation between actors, and that works better with arrows because they show who is doing what with whom, and the arrows are numbered to express a sequence of activities. We called as story. On the other hand, that is another difference is each domain story is about the one scenario. And also domain storytelling tools grouped three different parts. In the first group, describe the actors, and domain stories are told from an actor's perspective, and actors may be a person, a software system, a group, or something like that. Hence, we use different pictograms for our actors. On the other hand, we have a work objects, and actors create a work with and exchange work objects and information about work objects such as documents and messages to pictograms represent the work objects medium. And also we use relationships with arrows in the domain storytelling tools. The actors' activities are depicted as arrows. So I want to show you can use Miro or Drawio or other tools to draw your domain storytelling, but I prefer to use the domain modeler. And as you can see, we have a customer actor, and customer actors enters the product page, and then our product page needs the product listing information, and so it's called the product listing system. And also product listing system is an actor, and product listing system ask to discount engine for available discounts, and they send only the available listings to our discount engine system, and our discount engine system try to build some recommendation on offers based on these listings. But our discount engine, and as you can see, doesn't have any idea about the client or other segments or other product information. So it must be fetch client information and product information first, and then it must be built its own domain logic with using this information. So first of all, our discount engine call the client management system with using client ID, and our client management system is another actor in our ecosystem, and it responds the segments to our discount engine again. After that, our discount engine system needs to know the product information data, because our product listing system it just store simple projections. So our engine calls to our product management system, and it's another actor in our environment, and then it responds products to our discount engine. And after that, our discount engine applies some business logics and to build some offers for our clients, and responds to available discounts to our product listing actor. And then our product listing actor builds some offer with product discount information and send this offer to our customers. This is the simple implementation or explanation of the domain storytelling technique in our domain problem. So I can share presentation again. Okay. After the discover our domain, we need to apply the strategic architecture and decide the strategic design patterns. In fact, strategic design is the most important step of domain-driven design. It offers some techniques for describing your domain and its components, and it contains ubiquitous language, bounded context, context map, and core domain concepts. And we can define bounded context as a region of the application where consistent behavior is expected. One region of the application may require a client, in example, and with birthday information and name, and while another region may only care about the client name. It's important to keep these regions separate to preserve consistent behavior and conceptual integrity. Frederick Brooks talked a lot about this concept in his book, The Mythical Man of Mount. On the other hand, any given model is only applicable within a context, and it should remain consistent within that context. The context-model relationship should be explicitly defined. On the other hand, bounded contexts do always refer to separate solutions, but definitely separate areas of solutions. And each context ideally has its own theme or structure, but this is not terribly common in the real world, and it's good to keep the separation mentally at least. Also, we try to build our ubiquitous language to decide our strategic architecture. And ubiquitous language refers to all the terms and their definitions being used in the project. One of the great advantages of the ubiquitous language is to bring together the domain experts and the technical team and the other involved in the project. By the way, ubiquitous language should never be a set of terms or technical jargons imposed by domain experts or technical leads. On the contrary, a ubiquitous language is developed in agreement of the whole team, and the ubiquitous language must be spoken at all times between the team members and expressed in a software model. This actually causes us to establish a communication bridge between the technical peoples or problem space and the solution space. On the other hand, we need to know the subdomain concept to define our domain objects. And basically, subdomain is to problem space as bounded context is to a solution space. Subdomain is abstracted to the level of the problem, and while bounded context is not as abstracted because it's at the level of the solution. Sometimes bounded context is shaped to fit the subdomain, sometimes not. The latter is often the case in some legacy codes. And strategic patterns are focused on integrating bounded contexts, which are logical boundaries in our systems. When the problem space is defined with domains and subdomains, it's time to implement the architecture or teams that will take care of the solution space. And bounded contexts define a common language or model within a subdomain. And usually, when the language or model beings changing its meaning, it means the another bounded context can create. I prefer to use core domain chart to build my strategic architecture design, and it helps you to visualize the strategic importance of each subdomain or business capability in your architecture, allowing you to make business model aligned architectural decisions. And as you can see, we have core, supporting, and generic domains in our graph, and we have two different domain objects in our core context, and these are discount and offer domains. And our discount and offer domains binded together with a collaboration topology. On the other hand, we need to product and client information. So we assume that there are different teams, and we bind this teams with using the X as a service topology. So maybe we can use some localization domains to localize our messages. So localization or configuration or something like that is represent a generic domain context. So, and after declare our domain objects, we need to decide our context maps. And in fact, to visualize how different bounded contexts interact, DDD has a general purpose technique or tools called context mapping. And when creating a context map, it's possible to identify potentially logical boundaries in a system. And strategic patterns work by specifically integrating those different bounded contexts. Also, we can define the context mapping as the simplest way to identify relationships between bounded contexts is to classify the context as the upstream contexts and the downstream contexts. As you can see, we have two different main contexts. The first one is the discount context, and the second one, the offer context. I prefer to use the partnership context map to bind this, to build a relationship with this different contexts, because the teams of both contexts cooperate, and the interface evolve so that they accommodate the development needs to both contexts. And independently features are properly planned and scheduled so that they cause as little harm as possible to both teams. On the other hand, I prefer to use the open host context mapping to bind product, client, and localization contexts to our base or core domains, because open host service access to a system and is provided by clearly defined services using a clearly defined protocol, and the protocol is open so that anyone who needs to can integrate with this system. Web services or microservices are a good example of this integration pattern. And the key when using this pattern is to keep the protocol simple and stable. And as you can see, our discount context and offer context is upper bound contexts, and localization, client, and product contexts are downstream contexts. So after the modeling our context mapping, we need to focus on the aggregate design. And I prefer to use the aggregate design canvas to design my aggregate because it's a modeling tool meant to be used as a part of a design level domain modeling activities. An aggregate is a lifecycle pattern originally defined by Eric Evans, and by aggregate we understand a graph of objects that is a consistency boundary for our domain policies. Depending on the design of the aggregate, we can either enforce them or be forced to have corrective policies in place. Because of that, it's important to design the boundaries of aggregates well, as they impact behaviors modeled within our domain. This canvas has suggested orders of working through it, and that helps to iteratively discuss different aspects of the aggregate design. So as you can see, I just set a name for my aggregate like offer, and I added some description for my aggregate. I just add some roughly throughput and size, and also I just add enforcement invariants. For example, discount is calculated only for segments 1, 2, and 3. On the other hand, I don't have any corrective policies. I don't have any state transitions like opened, closed, or frozen, something like that. And I don't have any created event like product created, order created, or other stuff. I just have only one comment for this example. I just try to handle the make an offer command. Okay. After the technical, before the technical architecture, I need to clarify some buzzwords about the domain-driven design. And first of all, we need to understand the aggregates. And aggregates are a set of entities and value objects that change together. And every aggregate has an aggregate root, which is the parent of all objects in the aggregate. This route can be determined by asking some question like, if I delete this member of the aggregate, do I need to delete the others? And it means cascading delete. And if the answer is yes, that object is the root. For example, if a person object gets rid of its phone number, okay, this is not a cause for deletion of the person. But if the person is deleted, the phone number, if the person is deleted, the phone number should also be deleted. So person is the root. We can say the person is the root. And an indirectional relationship between the root and other objects in the aggregate should run from the root to the other objects. The root can reference to the other objects, and only the root can reference those objects. And this is the important part of an aggregate. You can also have an aggregate that only contains one object, and data changes to an aggregate should be atomic and consist and is isolated and durable. And we need to know the invariants. Invariant is the most important part of the tactical design, and it means rules in an application that must be followed in order for the model to be validated. A real-world example would be the speed of the light. The aggregate root should be responsible for enforcing invariance. On the other hand, we use a repository, and repository controls data access in order to maintain consistency. It is responsible for object persistence. And a repository's interface should be an illusion of a collection, according to Julia Lerman. And it also provides methods for common queries, and we need to keep code dry in this layer. Also, repositories should be provided only for aggregate roots. We don't use repositories for value object or something like that. And also, we need to know the value object, an object whose identity is defined by the values, its properties. It must be immutable, by the way. On the other hand, we need to know the entity, and object whose identity is based on continuity of identity, and which is not defined by its value. So after the explanation of this basic concepts, we can check our code implementation together. So, as you can see, we have two different aggregates, an offer and discount, based on our core domain chart. And our offer aggregates have ID, segments, and other properties to build its own domain logics. We hold and manage all offer domain logics in here. And as you can see in our core domain charts, we need to know the product and client. And I defined our products and clients as an entity. We have a client, and we have a client, as you can see, but we need to enrich the client to build our domain object. So we need to access the client service directly in our domain object. So I just declare some service adapter to access the client service, and then, as you can see, wait a second. Okay, I just show that in here. We have some interface to represent the client service behaviors, and I just added the get by ID function to fetch some client from the client service. And we have some client contract and product contract, and it's different. These are different from our domain object because our bounded context behaviors can be changed, but we need to define and we need to ensure our domain object in our aggregate. So we convert our contracts to our domain objects in our domain. So when we need to build some clients, we just call the client service with some HTTP port or HTTP protocol or something like that, and just validate our client object, and then just mapping our client object, client contract with our own domain object. And we need to make sure our objects must be safe in our domain aggregate. On the other hand, I declare some product objects to build our business logics in our domain aggregate. And I use domain service adapter like client service to fetch product information from the other domain, other subdomain, which name is product. And we try to fetch product information from the product actor with using HTTP call, and then just try to map this object to our own aggregate. And after that, like I said, we have discount aggregate. And as I said earlier, discount and offer domains are the same, and we use collaboration for this domain, and we prefer the partnership as a context map. And so we just call the domains discount aggregate with using the discount repository, and we just find the optimal discount by product ID, and our discount aggregate just return the optimal discount from their own database to us to build some offer to our customers. So when we try to create a new offer, we need to pass client, product, and discount objects to our aggregate. And for this, we have some adapters to access our bounded contexts or subdomains. And I just create some simple query objects like make and offer query. I just add client ID and product ID to my query, and then I just try to handle this query in my domain, in my aggregates. And to offer any discount to my customers, I need to know the client. So first of all, I need to try to ensure the client informations, and with building a new client in our aggregate, in my aggregate. And then I try to build product object, product entity with using product service adapter. And then I just call the discount repository to find optimal discount with my product ID. And after that, I just apply some business logic. And first of all, I check this segment. Client must have a segment to see any offer from my side. And also, I just check client segments are matching or not our defined segments, because in our assumptions we aligned and discussed only the 3 different segments to this feature. So if our client segment matched the defined segment, we just calculate the simple discount and apply this discount amount to our another aggregate object. We can use optimal discount as a value object because we don't have any identifier and we don't have any identity property for our objects, and it's immutable and it's changed when the dependent properties change. And if the discount amount calculated and changed to the optimal discount, I just return the offer. But in this part, I prefer to use the clean architecture. I just create some folder structure like application, domain, and infrastructure. I don't have any API layer for now. I just return an offer, but I need to access an offer in my application layer. So I just create an make an offer query handler to capture this make an offer query and start to build my own business logics. So I just declare some query handler, and I just pass the relevant boundaries or dependencies to my handler with using some constructor function. And then I just append an handle function to listen this event. I prefer to use the mediator to handle these events. If any events occurred, I just capture this event and try to convert this message to my query. On the other hand, I just try to fetch all offers from the database, and then if any offers fetched from the database, I just apply my domain logic in my handler, in my application layer, and then I just convert my domain object to my contracts, because I don't I, I, I can't share my domain directly to my API layer or my clients. I just use some contracts to abstract my domain from the other components. So I prefer to use the assembler pattern as the enables to convert some objects to another object. And in this part, I will just convert my offers to my contract with using the assembler patterns. And then I just want to show an offer contract to you. And as you can see, I just have an ID, discounted price, and price properties in my contract, but my aggregate is different from that. My aggregate is enriched object and have lots of properties, but I don't want to share my business logics or expose my business logics to my clients. So I prefer to use, I must use some contract mapping to prevent expose the business logics to my clients. And I don't have any API layer because this concept is based on the domain design. And I think that's from me. If you have any question, I'll try to answer that.